Imagine finding a ship with dinner still on the table. Plates, cups, everything exactly where it was left. Except the crew disappeared 170 years ago. Or exploring the deep ocean. Your lights hit something in the darkness. A ship, complete, intact, with its mast still standing. It's been down there for 2,400 years. Sound impossible, right? Welcome to Stories Lost Forever. The Baltic Sea. Freezing cold, dark, deadly, but it has something special. The water is so cold and has such low salt content that any wood doesn't rot. Ships that sink here stay preserved, like they were frozen in time. Off the coast of Latvia, divers started finding ships. Not one, not two, dozens. Medieval trading ships lying on the bottom like someone just parked them there yesterday. But these ships were 600 years old. These ships belonged to something called the Hanseatic League. Think of it like Amazon, but in the 1300s. Except instead of trucks, they used ships. Big ships. And they controlled all the trade in Northern Europe. But here's the thing. We only knew about them from old books and paintings. We had no idea what their real lives were like. How did they actually live? What did they eat? How did their ships really work? The wrecks answered everything. Inside one ship, they found a wooden bowl. Someone had carved their name into it. 600 years ago, a sailor sat on the ship, took out his knife, and carved his name so nobody would steal his bowl. We don't know what happened to him, but we know he existed. We know his name. They found navigation tools, real ones. These medieval sailors weren't just guessing their way across the sea. They knew math. They knew astronomy. They were professionals. One wreck had something remarkable. A ship's diary. Actual words written 600 years ago. The captain complaining about the weather. Hoping for a good price for his cargo. Annoyed at his crew. Just a regular guy doing his job. And now we can read his thoughts. For a long time, we thought medieval people were simple. Not very educated. Mostly superstitious. The Baltic wrecks showed us something different. These sailors were running a complex trade network across an entire sea. They had standardized ship designs, quality control, technical skills that took years to develop. They knew what they were doing. The cold Baltic waters saved their story. You can still see the marks where they cut the wood, where they stood on deck, where they worked. It's like walking onto a medieval ship that just happens to be underwater. There was a small leather shoe, probably from a teenage boy working on the ship, a comb made from bone, a wooden game piece. These people had lives. They had belongings. They played games to pass the time, and then they disappeared. The Hanseatic League fell apart. Their culture got absorbed into other countries. The real story of who they were, gone. The impossible find. New York City, 2010. Construction workers are digging at ground zero. They're preparing to build the new towers. They're going deep, really deep, and then they hit wood. Old wood. They keep digging. More wood. Lots of it. And then they realize it's a ship, a full-sized sailing ship, buried 20 feet underground. in the middle of Manhattan, blocks away from the water. How? How does a ship end up under a city? The answer is wild. This ship helped build New York. The story unfolds. The year was 1773. America wasn't even America yet, just colonies. And New York was tiny, a small port town at the edge of the continent. This ship was built that year. It sailed back and forth across the Atlantic, carried cargo, made money. Just a regular merchant ship doing regular ship things. Then it got old, started leaking, wasn't worth fixing. So someone had an idea. New York was growing fast. The city needed more land. So they started pushing the shoreline out into the water using landfill. Just dump rocks and dirt until you have new land. But you know what works even better than rocks? Ships. They stripped this ship of anything valuable. Then they sank it on purpose, filled it with rocks, buried it, built streets over it, and forgot about it. For 237 years, this ship sat under Manhattan. Silent, forgotten, its story buried. Real quick, if you're enjoying these lost stories, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps other people find these videos. And if you want more stories like this every week, subscribe to Stories Lost Forever and turn on notifications. The King's Ship, July 19th, 1545, England. King Henry VIII is standing on the beach watching his navy sail out to fight the French. Among his ships is the Mary Rose, his favorite. She's been fighting for England for 34 years. A veteran, reliable, the king's pride and joy. He watches her sail out, and then something goes wrong, horribly wrong. The ship suddenly tilts to one side. Water rushes in through the cannon ports. Men start screaming. And in just minutes, the Mary Rose capsizes and sinks. The king watches his ship disappear. About 500 men go down with her. Only 35 survive. They try to raise her immediately. It doesn't work. Eventually, they give up. The Mary Rose is left on the bottom, forgotten. 500 men, 500 stories, 500 families who never knew exactly what happened. All lost for 437 years. The Return. 1971, divers found the Mary Rose again. Half the ship was still there. The mud had protected it. It was in remarkable condition. They started planning. Could they actually raise this ship? Could they bring it back? In one of the most watched archaeological events ever televised, they lifted the Mary Rose from the seabed. They brought back an entire Tudor warship. But the ship was just the beginning. Inside, they found 19,000 objects. Each one told a piece of the story. A doctor's chest, full of medical tools, jars of medicine. One jar was still sealed after 437 years underwater. This doctor packed his supplies expecting to treat wounded men in battle. He never got the chance. He died with his ship, a wooden bowl with a name carved in it. Some sailor's personal ball. In a cramped ship where everything was shared, this was his. He carved his name to mark it. We'll never know his face, but we know he existed. Longbus, dozens of them, still in such good condition that researchers could measure how strong they were. These weren't just weapons. Every longbow represents a lifetime of training. English archers started as kids. They practiced so much that their skeletons actually grew differently. Their bones adapted to pulling those massive bows. The skeletons found in the Mary Rose show this. These men's bones were shaped by years of archery. They were professionals, warriors, and they all died together. Over 90 skeletons were recovered. Each one revealed something about these men's lives. One young man had broken his collarbone years before. It healed at an angle, but he kept working anyway. His bones show the physical strain of hauling ropes with that injured shoulder. He adapted, kept doing his job. An older man, maybe 40. His teeth revealed he didn't grow up in England, probably the Mediterranean, based on his childhood diet. Somehow this man traveled north, ended up in England, joined the Navy, and died on the King's warship. And then there's the dog, a small dog, probably a rat catcher. Its skeleton was found near the carpenter's cabin. Someone brought their pet on board. That dog had a name, though we'll never know it. It died when a ship went down. The Mary Rose gave us back stories that had been silent for over 400 years. Not just how a ship sank, but who was on it. These weren't just numbers in a casualty report. They were real people. A doctor packing his medical kit, a sailor carving his name on his bowl, an archer who trained his whole life, a man from the Mediterranean far from home, a pet dog. Now we can tell their stories. The Impossible Ship. 2017, a robot submarine is exploring the Black Sea floor off the coast of Bulgaria. Its cameras scan the darkness, and then they see something that shouldn't be possible. A ship, not pieces, not wreckage, a complete, intact ship. The mast is still standing. The steering oars are still attached. Coils of rope are still on the deck. This ship is 2,400 years old. It looks like the crew just stepped off, but they stepped off during the time of ancient Greece, when Socrates was still alive, when the Parthenon was new. How is this possible? How does a wooden ship survive for over 2,000 years? The answer is in the water itself. The Black Sea has a unique feature. Below about 500 feet, there's almost no oxygen in the water. And without oxygen, organic material doesn't decay. No bacteria, no wood-eating organisms, nothing. It's one of the best preservation environments on Earth. Anything that sinks deep enough stays remarkably intact. This ship is 75 feet long, a trading vessel. It probably carried wine, olive oil, grain, normal cargo, a merchant doing regular business around the Black Sea. And then it sank. Maybe a storm. Maybe it hit rocks. We'll never know for certain. The crew likely drowned. Bodies are long gone, but their ship remained. The team didn't raise it. It's too deep and too fragile. Instead, they used cameras and 3D scanners to document every detail. They created models showing every timber, every joint, every construction technique. And here's what's remarkable. The ship matches exactly what we see painted on ancient Greek pottery. For years, Historians debated whether those paintings were accurate or artistic interpretations. This ship answered that question. They were accurate. This ship shows us how ancient Greeks actually built their vessels. The joints, the techniques, the design choices. Things we could only guess at before. But there's more down there. The same expedition found over 60 shipwrecks in the Black Sea. Ancient Greek traders, Byzantine merchants, medieval vessels, Ottoman warships, all preserved in the deep, oxygen-free water. The ships that vanished in the ice. 1845, 2 British Royal Navy ships sailed into the Arctic with 129 men aboard. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Their mission: find the Northwest Passage, the route through the frozen north connecting the Atlantic and Pacific. These were experienced men on well-equipped ships. They had supplies for 3 years. Steam engines, reinforced hulls for ice, the best equipment available. They were never seen again. Not a single man survived. For 169 years, it was one of exploration's biggest mysteries. What happened to Franklin's expedition? Where did the ships go? How did 129 men simply disappear? Search expeditions found clues. Graves on an island. Abandoned equipment. Inuit witnesses described starving white men walking south through the snow. But the ships themselves? Gone. 2014, a Canadian search team found HMS Erebus in shallow water near King William Island. It was sitting upright on the seafloor, remarkably intact. 2 years later, in 2016, they found HMS Terror. And Terror was in extraordinary condition. The ship sat upright in about 80 feet of water. All 3 masts were still standing. Hatches were closed. It looked like it had been carefully placed there, not wrecked. When divers entered the ship, they found it haunting. The captain's cabin was still arranged. Plates on tables, bottles in racks, documents in drawers. Personal items exactly where they'd been left 170 years earlier when the crew abandoned ship and walked to their deaths. One diver described swimming through Terror as entering a tomb, but a lived-in tomb. You could see where men had slept, where they'd eaten, where they tried to stay warm in the Arctic darkness. The ship remembered everything. 5 ships, 5 stories that were silent for decades or centuries. Medieval merchants in the Baltic, a Revolutionary-era vessel beneath New York, Tudor sailors in the English Channel, ancient Greek traders in the Black Sea, Victorian explorers in the Arctic ice. Each one took human stories down with them into darkness. But the ocean preserves what the land destroys. And sometimes, those lost stories find their way back to us. These ships remind us that history isn't just what's written in books. It's what's buried, what's sunken, what's waiting to be found. Every shipwreck on every seafloor holds a story. And with modern technology, underwater robots, advanced diving, deep-sea exploration, we're finding more of them every year. The ocean has been holding on to these stories for us. And now we can finally listen. If you enjoyed uncovering these stories, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people discover this channel. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Stories Lost Forever and turn on notifications. We bring the lost stories every week. What shipwreck fascinated you most? Are there other lost stories you'd like us to explore? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep searching for the stories time tried to erase.